Before I begin, I would like to just briefly introduce myself and my colleague. My name is Linda Stewart. I am the Director of Global Education Innovation Programs at AFS Intercultural. And before I begin, I wanted to acknowledge that I am based in Minnesota, which is a vibrant and diverse state in the United States with history and influence of the Dakota people. I reside and work from the unceded land of the Wakupte people of the Dakota Nation. And I acknowledge that in my work and as an interculturalist, it is part of my duty to recognize the narrative of this area in this region that has been told long from a dominant perspective without acknowledging the narratives of those who were here before and are still here. So it is with that commitment today that I am excited that my colleagues at AFS have agreed to open up this brave space, and our special guests have agreed to come to hear from our brothers and sisters, Indigenous brothers and sisters from all around the world. Makwaneno, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Linda. My name is Mwakaneno Gakweli. I am an intern at AFS, joining from Nairobi in Kenya. In the same spirit as Linda, I am joining from Nairobi, which is the original unceded land of the Maasai community in Kenya, but now houses people from Kenya and all over the world. Welcome to today's webinar.
As I mentioned, this is the second session in the IEW. International Education Week is an opportunity to really celebrate the benefits of international education and exchange, whether it be in person, mobility, or virtual around the world. So to mark this occasion, AFS has organized this series of webinars on lots of different topics, from intercultural and global competence pedagogy to assessment, virtual exchange, diversity, equity and inclusion, the Indigenous perspectives we're hearing today, and teacher education. I encourage you to visit our website at afs.org/IEW, and you can see the remaining webinars that are open for the rest of this week. And if there are any you want to go back and watch, they will be available on our YouTube channel as well. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with AFS, but maybe for some of you who are not, we are an international NGO with over 100 years of existence and 70 years of experience in intercultural programs. We have 55 offices, national organizations operating in 113 countries. And on any given year, we can have 12,000 students on exchange. AFS has 3 impact goals. The first one being to develop active global citizens, to globalize schools and institutions, and to expand access to intercultural education. I think we're most excited to unpack what that first impact objective means with our guest speakers today. With that, I'll turn it over to Makwaneno to introduce our guests.
Now, for today, we have 2 special guests. We have Karl Wixon from the Maori people, and we have Paola Ixel from the Comunidad Indígena Mayan and in Guatemala. And a little bit about our speakers today. Now, Karl is of the Ngai Tahu, Kati Mamoe, Waitaha, Moriori, and Gatitao Rangatira Indigenous Maori tribes of Aotearoa in New Zealand, as well as having English, Irish, and Lithuanian ancestry. His work sits in the intersection of culture, commerce, and creativity, and his driving purpose is self-described as designing futures and making shift happen. He has worked widely across many domains of Indigenous interest, working with and for tribal nations, Indigenous people, private sector, and government. He is contracted by Education New Zealand, Manapou ki te ao as Kiarahi Maori, or cultural guide, developing the Indigenous focus within international education. He has worked globally on Indigenous enterprise and economic development, including working in Manitoba, Canada, with First Nations, industry, and government. He describes himself as a third space practitioner, frequently working between cultures, sectors, and nations, weaving together shared strategy, relationships, programs, and projects. He is a member of a number of global Indigenous networks and has held numerous leadership roles, including as a former governor of the Te Wananga or Aotearoa, New Zealand's largest Indigenous tertiary education organization. Now, Paola, on the other hand, Paola Ixel is a 27-year-old member of the Comunidad Indígena Maya Cachiquel in Guatemala. She's an economist and currently pursuing a master's degree in financial management at the University of San Carlos in Guatemala. Her favorite animals are dogs. She enjoys hiking, traveling, and getting to know new places. In 2013, she had the opportunity to do a year of cultural exchange in Switzerland, and now she's doing a year of volunteering in Germany. Sharing her culture and learning from other cultures through people, food, language, customs, and tradition is very appealing to her. Over to you, Karl.
Oh, you're still muted, Karl, but I unshared, so you can go ahead and share your presentation. Thank you so much.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou, greetings to you all from Aotearoa New Zealand. It is just after 8 a.m. Tuesday, the 15th of November here. So I know for many of you, I will be coming to you from the future. So hopefully I can provide you a glimpse of what it holds. And from an Indigenous perspective on this subject of global citizenship. So it's a real pleasure to be with you today, to be invited. Thanks to Linda and Makaneno for hosting us. And it's a real pleasure and a privilege to be presenting alongside Paola Ixel, who's going to be adding another perspective. So I'm looking forward to not just presenting, but the dialogue that might follow. So we have a Māori proverbial saying, ka mua ka muri, which reminds us to sort of look to the past as we advance into the future. Some explain it as walking backwards into the future. So I will be doing a bit of that today, looking to our past in order to kind of, I guess, design our future when we look at this subject of global citizenship. I am going to open my presentation today using both Te Reo Māori, our Indigenous Māori language, in accordance with some of our customary protocols, but I will also then pause after each part to explain in English as I do, quite purposefully, because in doing this, what I'm hoping to do is to provide you a bit of glimpse into Te Ao Māori, the Māori world, which will underpin what I'm going to talk about in terms of a Māori perspective on global citizenship. So I will be sharing some slides at the same time as I do this, which will give a visual depiction and illustration of what I'm talking about. And I guess just for context, I'm guessing many of you at least would appreciate Māori with the Indigenous people of Aotearoa New Zealand, right down at the southern end of Te Moananui-a-Kiwa, the Great Pacific Ocean. We have, I guess we're one of many Commonwealth nations with a colonial history, and part of our kind of, I guess, our founding document signed in 1840 between Māori as the Indigenous people and the British Crown, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, or the Treaty of Waitangi, was signed back in 1840. And that's an instrument that is woven through a lot of what we do with our government and how we work together, including within our education sector. So without further ado, I'm going to share a presentation. It's going to be a bit of a speed dating version because there's a lot to get through in a short space of time, but hopefully it will provide some insight and stimulus for thinking about global citizenship. So bear with me, I am going to share screen now. So I've referred to this as Hono Kiti Ao for us, which is connecting to the world. And I shall, without further ado, open with some of our customary protocol. Ka tangi te titi, ka tangi te ka tangi hoki koe te hei mauri ora. So I started, this is a chant that's often used to announce ourselves before we speak in customary situations. And it refers to these two birds, the titi and the kaka. The titi is the sooty shearwater, the mutton bird. My family is one of those who for hundreds of years have carried out a customary harvest of these birds as a primary food source. But we make reference to them because they voyage right around the Pacific Rim. They go up off the coast of Japan, up into the Bering Sea, down the coast of California, and a few of them splinter away and nest on an island of Huafu off the Straits of Magellan in Chile. So it really is our global explorer. And the kaka, this forest parrot, is we kind of personify it as the gossip monger or the chatterbox of the forest. So even in this little saying that we open a lot of our oratory with, we are talking about both looking beyond the visible horizon out across the ocean and listening and tuning into what's going on out there, as well as tuning into what's going home in the local context, in our own backyard, in our own communities. Ko te raki nui e tu iho nei ko te papatua tēnā koe ko te papatua nuku e takoto nei tēnā korua. So I give greetings to our Sky Father and our Earth Mother. In our ontology, our story of one of our many stories of creation, they are separated by their children, and between the space of light emerges that we refer to as te ao marama, which we consider the space of light, and maramatanga is a word for enlightenment. Ko auraki te mauka tapu araki. Ko motu pohu I toki mauka te ara kiwa te moana awarua te kaik te rauaroha toku marae. So I've just taken you through how we identify ourselves as Māori by our whakapapa or our connections to our Earth Mother first. We identify ourselves through from Sky Father to Earth Mother, from the top of the mountains down through our rivers to our oceans to our settlements, and ultimately and finally to ourselves. He mihi nui ki a tautau nā hu e whā, ko hui mai I tēnei rā, nau mai piki mai hara mai ki tēnei wāhanga mo te kaupapa te pō. So I do so then extend greetings to all of you from the four winds as we gather here today. So this is a standard kind of procedural protocol through which we identify ourselves and acknowledge others. And I make reference to this because a lot of our ontology or those creation stories frame the worldview and frame some of our understanding of our relationship with other people and places. So the word we use for spirit or spirituality is wairua, and its source is the two waters from our Sky Father and our Earth Mother. So those that fall from the sky and those that rise from the earth. We see ourselves, I guess, and everyone being connected by water, and everyone also being connected by what we refer to a term whakapapa. Whaka is like to activate or connect or cause. Papa, in this case, is earth, or papa tuanuku is our name for the Earth Mother. So we see that everyone on the planet is connected to our Sky Father and our Earth Mother. And in our ontology and our teachings, which vary tribe to tribe, in my case, I refer to these as Takitimu teachings, we see those two main domains of Aotearangi, the Sky Father, Papa Tuanuku, the Earth Mother, and two simple domains in between, Te Taiao, which is the oxygen world within Earth's atmosphere and above the surface of water and land, and Te Taimoana, which is everything from the surface of water down to Papa Tuanuku, our Earth Mother. We also have aligned stories on ontology of creation that align with a similar narratives. This one I'm making reference to here. We go through all these stages of creation from te kore, ki te pō, ki te whaiao, ki te ao marama, from the void of potential and nothingness and darkness through various stages of night into the dawn, or think of Big Bang Theory, the moment of the spark, through to the formation of the world of light in which we live. So this ontology, these stories of creation are also our creative process. They line up with nature's system logics, and they shape a lot of the protocols we enact. So whilst you could look at this process as a process of creation, formation of the universe, it's also thought process. It's also creative process, not just creation process. And it's also conception through pregnancy to birth and out into the world of light. So we think of this moment of te ata, or the dawn, or te whaiao, as also the moment of birth. We think of te pō, this darkness, as also the space of dreaming, the space of wairua, of that spirit. So we have layers upon layers upon layers, all the layers of the onion. When we unfurl and unfold our ontology and creation stories, they provide these nature's system logic and blueprints that guide our customary practices and protocols. So we have ways in which that also then manifests in states of being and states of perceptiveness. So when we look at this process and we look at a te kore stage, it is about thinking about how do you go into that space of inner silence and calm in order to then be able to turn all your receptors on. We have a word, whakarongo, has a dual meaning. Whakarongo is to invoke or cause a state of calm and peace, and whakarongo is to turn on all of your senses other than, it's a word for all of our senses other than sight, like we have in utero through the stage of pregnancy, everything but sight. So being able to sense, listen, and feel before opening the eyes and seeing when we emerge into the world of light, and then before active engagement and interaction and physical manifestation of things in that te ao marama space. So we have these blueprints. So that governs a lot of our customary protocols, and I'm going to briefly share a video of a promotional piece that Education New Zealand Manapou ki te ao developed, working with one of our leading Māori fashion designers, interacting with a global cohort to do a joint project together. And you will see some of what I've talked about mirrored in this little brief video.
Nature binds us together, no matter where we are in the world. The sky stands above us and the land lays below us. Ko kiri Nathan tōku ingoa, ko nā pui ngā te hine, ngā te muri me ngā te haua o Iwis. My name is Kitty Nathan and I hail from those 4 tribes. The mission and brief was that we revise what we've been wearing as our graduation garbs since the 12th century. The current garb originated from the Roman Catholic Church and was created for the clerks who were learning in very cold and unheated churches, hence the full-length gown and the hood. We wanted to take a really refreshing and new look and approach to this and really represent our unique New Zealand education. Inspiration of nature,
the intangibles of the journey, like a sense of feeling,
culture,
we
want drama as well. For us, as a New Zealand-based design team, and also majority Māori, we were trying to look at this graduation garb in a way that it would represent all the people that chose a New Zealand education and also really celebrate our unique offering here in New Zealand.
The tile is everything in Aotearoa, and that's such a Māori design principle where the tile reflects us, our students who have come from all over, and we're bound on this one day of graduating, just like water binds us. Te moana nui a kiwa and the awa throughout Aotearoa. It's the misty blues of the water and the stones, the reflection of the sky to the sea.
We really wanted to develop what our inspiration was. We talked about water, the fluidity of it, and it's also the thing that connects our island to the rest of the world.
I went out and sourced textile waste that has been salvaged from the hospitality industry, so things like tablecloths and sheets from hotels. So it's a completely sustainable process.
Kia ora te whānau, nau mai hara mai ki tēnei hui tapa. We're so excited to be. Student input into this particular design development was huge.
When you imagine yourselves walking across that stage to receive your tohu in front of your peers, in front of your whānau, what does that mean to you?
The interaction with the international students was done via interviews and really deep thought around what was uniquely important to them as individuals.
It's just completely an interest to do something innovative. It's totally a creative project and everybody involved in this has put in so much love.
All the design details and the embroidery and the pleating is very refreshing.
It's authentic, but it's very unique. Pretty much all are from different cultures and different countries, but working together as Kiwi students,
really about enabling other taonga from different cultures to be seen a little bit more.
We spoke to 8 different international students about what was important to them, and then we broke those down into colourways, and then we implemented them into specific kākahu that represented them as individuals from their countries, their whānau, their origins, and what it felt like for them to be here in New Zealand being educated. Kia ora and welcome everyone. We reimagined our traditions and we took a new look at one of the most enduring symbols of education, the graduation gown. We drew inspiration from the nature of Aotearoa, Te Ao Māori, and our shared values when we think about an education in New Zealand. Kaitiakitanga, Manakitanga, Le Maui Pōtiki, and we'd love to present to you the new graduation gowns, Ngā Kākahu Hou. It was a very natural process for us as the design team to weave the values of Manakitanga, Kaitiakitanga, and Maui Pōtiki into the garb.
Receiving this gown to me represents the love and respect that New Zealand has for its students.
It's an extension of the hospitality and friendliness of everyone in New Zealand that has welcomed me all these years.
Manakitanga is all about how we care for people. This value was integrated into the new kākahu via the woven element. And it also spoke to the weaving together of cultures when they come here. Kaitiakitanga is about guardianship and protection, specifically of people and planet. All of the fabric has a sustainable origin. Then they were sustainably dyed and then hand woven and made into the final garb.
Here in New Zealand, I appreciate the respect that people have for the land around them. And that ties in really beautifully with what's been done here with the kākahu today.
Maui Pōtiki represents this mischievous, adventurous kind of ahua or spirit. We're really representing that Maui Pōtiki through this new thinking and ways of developing things that are unique to New Zealand. The Potama design being represented in this way within the kākahu, that can only be done in New Zealand.
The Potama pattern is like my journey in New Zealand, all the steps that I've taken so far and all the steps I will take in the future to achieve my goal.
I felt the connection between my Chinese culture with my whole experience here in New Zealand.
New Zealand is putting all eyes into new things, how to think ahead for next generations. And this is the goal for next generation.
In Vietnamese culture, red means luck. This is my lucky gown, and I hope to take that luck with me into my future.
I'm so proud to wear the gown as a symbol of nighttime in New Zealand.
So what that video showcases in many regards is the process that Kitty Nathan led as a Māori woman, followed our creative process and followed our ways of engaging with and interacting with other cultures and people. And you would have seen, if you noted in that design, they made reference a couple of times to a pattern woven into those garbs called the potama. Kind of deliberately targeting the graduation gown too, I guess, in some regards, is almost a tohu or a symbol of, our Western academic system, which from a, I guess, colonial or Commonwealth or an Indigenous point of view is almost one of those icons of academia as the last bastion of kind of colonial patriarchy. So it was a nice thing to sort of challenge and disrupt and explore and experiment with this cross cultural engagement. So, many of these processes of engagement turn up in things like proverbial saying. I'm sharing one here on screen. Mā te rongo ka mōhio, mā te mōhio ka marama, mā te marama ka mātou, mā te mātou ka ora, which goes through all those stages of awareness and insight and learning together before doing stuff in the physical world and achieving well-being together. And I'm not going to go through this in detail, but that ara potama, that staircase pattern is one of learn, teach, learn, teach, learn, teach, that you don't progress to the next stage until you can disseminate and teach what you've learned. And we have processes and protocols and customary practices that allow us to go on those journeys together with other people. So here at Education New Zealand Manapou Ki Te Ao, this is one of the things we've been doing with global citizenship, is consolidating that Māori processes, normalizing, affirming, consolidating, sharing how those engagement processes and blueprints for cultural interaction and fostering global citizenship are already hardwired into our culture. We don't need to learn somebody else's new system. It's not the latest thing on the block. This is ancient and hardwired into that ontology and into our cultural practices. So I appreciate having the opportunity to share that with you today. Hopefully it gives you a bit of a glimpse into another perspective and a reminder that I guess my caution around things global often is that the thought that globalization you respond to with some sense of the need for homogeneity versus diversity and recognition of various points of view and cultural norms of practice for working with others. So nō reira, tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou. I'd like to now pass it on to Paola. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for sharing, Karl. There's already a couple of responses and questions and reactions to your session, and we're going to pick that up later. For Paola, we will have Andres who will be coordinating our live translation. Over to you, Paola.
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes o buenas noches en donde quiera que estén el día de hoy. A todos, muy agradecida por la invitación y por compartir este espacio con Karl, poder tener esta apertura para tener nuevo conocimiento.
Gracias, Paola. Well, Paola is just welcoming everyone and thanking Karl for being here, for sharing his knowledge and his story with you today. And she's very happy to be here.
Bueno, Uts Ipatik, eso significa bienvenidos en idioma Cachiquel. Como bien mencionaban al inicio, soy Paola y vengo de la comunidad Maya Cachiquel en Guatemala.
Paola is welcoming you in her native language, Uts Ipatik. She comes from the community of Maya Cachiquel in Guatemala.
Me gustaría empezar con la siguiente oración o frase de Mahatma Gandhi. Our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization. Me parece que esta frase nos da un pequeño contexto de lo que vamos a hablar el día de hoy. Además, quiero compartir un poco de mi experiencia como mujer indígena Maya Cachiquel dentro de mi país como en el extranjero.
Our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization. That's a quote by Mahatma Gandhi that Paola is using to start her presentation by sharing a little summary of what this is going to be about today. She's going to share her story as not only as an Indigenous, but also as an Indigenous woman, and talk about her experience in Guatemala, but also abroad.
Como un pequeño contexto, o bueno, en general, desde mi niñez he tenido la oportunidad de representar a mi país, en donde he afrontado situaciones tanto de discriminación, pero también de apertura de nuevas experiencias para poder transmitir mi conocimiento sobre mi cultura, como es el caso del día de hoy, y también aprender sobre otras culturas.
Paola had the opportunity to go through several experiences through her life that helped her understand her own identity and helped her understand how she perceives herself, and also what helped her get the story and the knowledge that she's going to share with us today.
Una parte fundamental que hoy por hoy se vive en algunas comunidades en Guatemala es la parte de la discriminación, como habíamos hablado anteriormente, en donde algunas miradas o comentarios han sido parte de mi vida, pero de igual manera me han ayudado, o las personas que estamos bajo este contexto nos ayudan a fortalecernos y a empoderarnos más de nuestra cultura.
Paola is very aware of the discrimination that people suffer around the world, and that she suffered herself when she was a child, and she still suffers. And although that has changed over time a little bit, she's aware that her and many people around the world that identify as Indigenous suffer from discrimination in their homeland, but also abroad.
Debo mencionar que a pesar de que son, a través de los años se ha tenido estas situaciones, estoy feliz de que con el tiempo estos han disminuido. Sin embargo, soy consciente de que mi contexto actual puede ser bastante diferente hacia algunos otros o algunas otras personas dentro de la misma cultura, dentro de Guatemala.
Fortunately, this discrimination has decreased a little bit in the past years, but that doesn't mean that has changed completely. And it's not only her case, she's also aware that people still go through this within their own communities in Guatemala and abroad too. So she's aware that many people are still suffering from this. That doesn't mean that things have changed.
Ahora me gustaría empezar con un poquito de información específicamente de mi cultura, de mi país, para poder ir avanzando específicamente en la comunidad maya cachiquel. Guatemala es considerada un país multiétnico, multilingüe y multicultural, específicamente porque para nosotros tenemos 4 etnias que son mayas, ladinos, carifunas y xincas.
So Paola would like to start by sharing some data and information about Guatemala's demographics. As you can see in the slide, Guatemala is a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multilingual society. And the 4 main ethnic groups in Guatemala are the Mayan, the Ladinos, the Carifunas, and the Xincas.
Dentro de o específicamente de la multilingüe, quiero mencionar que si bien Guatemala tiene el idioma oficial, el español, reconoce también el garífuna y el xinca como otros idiomas y además otros 22 idiomas mayas, lo que hace una totalidad de 25 idiomas dentro del país.
Although Spanish is the official language in Guatemala, Carifuna and Xinca are also recognized as official languages, and there are other 22 indigenous languages recognized in Guatemala.
El grupo étnico más representativo son los mayas, que son una representación aproximadamente del 42% de la población guatemalteca. Dentro de este grupo étnico existe una subdivisión de 22 grupos mayas, de las cuales el quiché, quechí y cachique son las más importantes, siendo el tercero la comunidad a la que yo pertenezco.
The largest indigenous group in Guatemala are the Mayas, and they represent almost 42% of the whole population. And within the Mayas, there are 22 subgroups. And the 3 largest ones are the Quiches, the Quechis, and the Cachichel, which is the group that Paola belongs to.
Me gustaría continuar con la siguiente diapositiva específicamente. Normalmente nosotros iniciamos indicando cómo ha sido la creación del mundo, la naturaleza y el medio ambiente, pero a mí me gustaría empezar como la creación del hombre, específicamente porque somos nosotros quienes interactuamos con la vida humana y entre nosotros para crear relaciones sociales, tanto uno con nosotros como con el ambiente.
So historical perspective here, because many people and through their world visions try to explain the world from the perspective or the point of view of the environment, for example. But she would like to start by sharing about the origin of mankind and of the man, precisely because this is the first connection that we have. This is the way we communicate with the rest of the world and with the environment through the origin of the man.
Para nosotros o para la comunidad maya, se plantea que el hombre fue buscado, creado de 3 diferentes maneras, siendo la tercera la más fuerte. Sin embargo, la primera es la representación de la creación del hombre con el lodo, que dado la consistencia física del material, deja al ser humano sin capacidad de moverse, sin capacidad del habla, lo que hace infuncional al ser humano como tal, en este caso de lodo, para poder crear sus actividades diarias y poder admirar lo que está en su entorno.
So they might explain the origin of men in 3 different ways. And she starts by explaining the origin of men of mud. So the men of mud, which was the first one, perceived humans as malleable, as changeable, transformable, but that made men being a little bit hard to be aware of what was happening around them and perceive the world through their feelings, and they were too inflexible. So it was important for them to understand that it was needed for humans to perceive the world emotionally beyond what they could.
Por otro lado, se busca iniciar otra forma de crear un ser humano, el cual se toma en cuenta la madera, donde ya por sí es más estable, puede comunicarse, puede andar. Sin embargo, las emociones, dado que es un material bastante fuerte, no permiten que pueda contemplar el entorno, ver la naturaleza como tal. Entonces, esto hace que se replantee la creación nuevamente del ser humano y desvalide la creación del hombre de madera en este caso.
So since the man of mud was unable to communicate, it was important for them to change that, and which is why they tried again to recreate men and humans through wood. So the use of the material of wood, which is more stable and has the capacity to communicate, but it was unable to connect with the environment, to see what was surrounding them and perceive the environment as well. And also to feel what the world and the environment was offering to them. So this was a way to reinvent humans.
Por otro lado, se plantea la creación del hombre mediante el maíz, donde pues ya se puede ver, observar que el mismo expresa, no solo se mueve, sino también habla y además hace que las emociones y contemple el entorno natural de lo que los dioses han creado anteriormente.
So then comes the third way, the man of corn, the humans created through corn, because in this third stage, men are not only able to move and communicate, but also to connect emotionally with their surroundings.
La importancia entonces en este punto, no solo para los guatemaltecos que somos reconocidos como el hombre de maíz, es poder tener este vínculo con las emociones y con nuestro entorno, o lo que el trasfondo de esto es poder ser consciente de nuestro alrededor para poder mantener un ambiente social y agradable con las personas que nos rodean.
So the important part about having the capacity to connect emotionally with the surroundings is to be able to understand, to be aware of people around them and what was important for them to take care of, so they could have the sense of belonging and believing that it was important for them to take care of everyone.
Continuando, y otra de las partes importantes de nuestra cultura es la contribución de 4 elementos, la cual teniendo la complejidad o tener la vinculación entre ellos permite que uno pueda estar en armonía. El agua, o voy a decir en idioma chiquel, ya es la representación del agua, que es la que nos permite ser conscientes de que es un vital líquido, no solo en el día a día, sino que nuestro cuerpo también está representado por una mayor parte de agua. Entonces, esto los mayas eran conscientes y por esa misma razón se tiene esta perspectiva.
Mayas see the world through the balance of the 4 elements: water, fire, air, and earth. And Paola starts by explaining Ja, or water, which Mayas saw as a key vital element for humans, because it wasn't only vital for them to survive, but it was important for them to realize that their bodies themselves were made of water.
Por otra parte, el fuego es la que nos representa la energía, o lo que nos da la energía, representado por el sol también, de lo que es lo que dan los nutrientes hacia las plantas en este caso. Y voy a continuar con el aire, también porque es el elemento de la purificación que nos permite estar constantemente, dado la purificación que se genera dentro de nuestros pulmones, en este caso, y finalmente la tierra, porque es la que se encarga de los nutrientes o de la creación de nuestros alimentos para continuar en nuestro día a día.
So the fire represents the energy that we need to survive, but also to connect with the environment. The second one is the air. The air symbolizes the purification of our bodies, because in order for us to deal with our daily lives and canalize the energy and so on, we need to purify our bodies as well. And the earth represents the nutrients that we get from the earth, that also helps us survive and go through the day.
Otra representación que se tiene muy consciente dentro de la cultura es los 4 puntos cardinales que podemos ver en la siguiente diapositiva, en donde el este está representado por el color rojo, en donde nos muestra la salida del sol. Y por eso es que se hace normalmente, estamos conscientes de que el norte es hacia donde tenemos que dirigirnos, sin embargo, se replantea y esto es hacia el este, dado la salida del sol que nos muestra un nuevo amanecer, un nuevo día para continuar en nuestro diario vivir.
And another important factor of Mayan cosmovision are the perception of the north, south, east, and west, in which they believe that the east guides the people. Instead of having a perception of seeing the north as the goal, as the direction we have to follow, they would prefer to look at the east, because that's where the sun comes from, and it is represented by the color red.
Por el otro lado tenemos el oeste, donde se oscurece, y por esa misma razón está representada por un color negro, donde nos tenemos que ser conscientes de lo realizado durante el día para poder mentalizarnos y ver qué podemos mejorar en nuestros próximos días para nuestra convivencia.
The other cardinal point, the west, represents where the sun goes down. That's why it's represented by the darkness, the color black, which presents an opportunity for people to reflect about how the day went by and reflect about what we can do better as humans.
El norte para nosotros está representado por el color blanco, que es el símbolo de la vida, y el sur por el color amarillo, que representa la justicia que queremos tener dentro de nuestro entorno. Entonces, el centro va a representar o va a ser representado por el color verde y azul, que es la naturaleza o el entorno en el cual estamos nosotros en el día a día. Entonces, finalmente, contemplamos que está tomando en cuenta desde el amanecer hasta el anochecer, tomando en cuenta los valores humanos, como también aquellos, y considerando el valor de la vida, donde sea la justicia y la dignidad lo que predomine.
So the north represents life, and the south, and is represented by the color white, and the south, represented by the color yellow, represents the justice. And in the middle, we have blue and green, which represents the sky and the environment, everything that surrounds us. Paola, would you mind repeating the last part so I can highlight that? ¿Podrías repetir la última parte?
El centro, o la parte del centro representada por el color verde y azul, representa nuestro entorno, nuestro ambiente, y finalmente, si nos damos cuenta desde la salida del sol hasta el anochecer, podemos tener presente la conciencia de la vida humana, como también estar presentes en la justicia y en la dignidad que es de los pueblos que tenemos que estamos en nuestro día a día.
So justice and dignity are very important for the Mayan culture. And if and Maya see the world as starting with the sunrise until the sundown, right? So that's how they perceive not only the day, but also life, in which there's an opportunity for us to grow and reflect about what happened, and also understand the concept of justice and dignity, and what is important for us to bring to all the people as brothers and sisters.
Si podemos continuar en la relación de la cosmovisión maya junto con un ciudadano global, pues ya lo hemos hablado anteriormente, es una perspectiva de cómo podemos estar conscientes de nosotros mismos en primer lugar para poder reflejar hacia los demás y poder ser conscientes no solo en la interacción social, sino en la naturaleza, porque la naturaleza forma parte importante de nosotros y en la actualidad nos podemos dar cuenta de la poca concientización que tenemos sobre esta.
So for Mayas, it's very important to first build and recognize and develop their self-awareness in order for them to get the awareness of others and understand how to create interpersonal relations and connect with others, and not only with other humans, but also with the nature and the environment, because it is impossible to connect with the environment and care about the world if we don't, if they don't gain and develop their self-awareness first.
Además, finalmente, en la siguiente diapositiva podemos ver, y esto es únicamente solo por orgullo representativo de mi cultura, quería hablar un poco de el espacio Iximché, que es finalmente la primera ciudad de Guatemala. En la siguiente diapositiva lo podemos ver. Y esta es reconocida la primera ciudad de Guatemala, en donde se puede evidenciar, si tienen la oportunidad de asistir, cómo la comunidad se manejaba para poder tener este ambiente de conexión y donde podían buscar cómo los elementos, tanto del agua como además se puede evidenciar cómo hacen estas ceremonias que hoy por hoy son muy factibles para pedir permiso hacia ciertas actividades como las cosechas, que hoy por hoy todavía se mantiene como dentro de la comunidad guatemalteca.
And she's very proud to, and it's important for her to highlight the first capital of Guatemala, the Ixinche, which is part of the province of Tecpan. And she highlights Iximche as the first capital, a sacred place where people would used to go and do some celebrations and ceremonies that were very connected with the surroundings and the environment, a place in which they would ask permission to the earth so they could start harvesting.
Finalmente, me gustaría agradecerles la participación, el apoyo y por el tema hoy presentado en idioma cachiquel, que es Mateos Nirwashak Nirusit.
Paola saying thank you for the time and for the consideration and for just being here present and listening to her presentation. And thank you, Paola, for letting me do the translation for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paola, for the wonderful presentation, and Andres for making sure that everyone is up to pace with what's happening. I like what you've presented, Paola, which kind of followed up what Karl had for us earlier. And it's the connection between human beings, according to your communities, as well as how they relate to nature and the different elements of nature, which kind of segue beautifully to one of the questions that we've received in our audience. I think this was meant for Karl, but then I'd love to hear from the both of you. Luciana asks, how do these beliefs remain present and visible in practice nowadays? And is there a reason for polarization between spiritual beliefs of indigenous communities and more mainstream beliefs?
I'll provide a response from my perspective, and then be interesting, Paola, to hear your thoughts. But I think the polarization in my mind is kind of just a symptom of intolerance, of difference. I think what Paola has shared and what I have shared, there's clear kind of points in alignment and clear kind of points of difference. And therein lies some of the kind of richness and diversity. But I guess in the context of, Catholic, that question anchored in also, I guess, the Catholic Church and I guess our experience as a colony, having gone through the process of colonization, is that it has largely been, sort of, I guess, Western doctrine, Western worldviews, and the arrival of missionaries that both directly and indirectly really, actually oppressed, displaced, marginalized, replaced a lot of our Indigenous belief systems and practices. And I'm not talking about a soft way, I'm talking about an aggressive way, and including through acts of legislation that literally made practices, some of our customary belief systems illegal, and language being abolished, Indigenous language being abolished out of schools. So if that in itself, of course, is going to create tension as well, where one worldview has been sufficiently eroded and suppressed, it has to compete and proclaim to even try and get visibility and airtime often. So I think there's a wee bit of an irony in the agenda of global citizenship, almost being a response to problems that processes like colonization have generated. It's those processes that are polarizing, that displace, disconnect, that create perceptions of hierarchy of peoples and from disciplines too that probably didn't show the same level of reverence for the natural world and the environment. So seeing others as something that could be conquered and exploited. So so it's kind of a tough challenge, I think, within our country, having come through that process, that we continue to still have to fight for visibility and acceptance of an Indigenous worldview. We're fortunate that there is a massive increase in appetite and intent around that, and growing goodwill, but it's still hard work. So I don't think the Indigenous perspectives have driven polarization. I think they tend to be quite inclusive and respectful of difference. That polarization tends to have other drivers. So sorry, I've talked at length, but I think there's a lot to be said. There's a lot in that question.
I appreciate what you just shared, Karl, especially with the irony of the concept global citizenship. I was curious just to hear your perspective on it as a concept, though you did share earlier on that the blueprint for global citizenry is embedded in, it's already there in the Indigenous ways. And I think Paola also helped illuminate some of that today. But I mean, we can very arguably say that, again, this is a colonizer's concept, this is an oppressor's concept, and that it really doesn't have any place. So I think when we go to maybe that more well-intended definition of being, stewards of the land and of the resources and of the world and being in relationship with each other, if we go to that sort of a definition, it can be more uniting, and it can be more meaningful in something that has been here, for a very long time. I love when you said it. It's not a new concept. It's not a new definition, but there is somebody's definition who is certainly getting heard or getting airtime. So I think that's contributing to some of this as well.
Yeah, I guess my point on that one is that we sort of don't need others parachuting in a new model for us. We've got one. So I guess that's my caution about seeing that in a global context, is that actually a lot of the time it's already there. I think Paola's presentation has communicated the same thing. They have their blueprints. We sort of don't need new blueprints. So, and that's the challenge with some of these things, particularly like the SDGs. Same thing. And SDGs haven't been developed from an Indigenous worldview. So they're not something that you want to see imposed, because if you're in a culture that has continuously had stuff imposed on it, it has a natural allergen that wants to resist that for good reason, because of history and context. So it will have an inclination to kind of want to actually just affirm, affirm things first, not, it doesn't, I don't know, what am I saying? Yeah, the risk in some of these things is a sense of imposing something new. I did a presentation like this within a New Zealand context, and one of the most heartening things was a response I had from a Māori teacher in a school who, has got the SDG version of global citizenship and a quite Western description of it, for him to kind of respond in the chat thread to me and go, I feel really empowered now to use our own model. Shouldn't be the case. They shouldn't have to feel that they're fighting against something to validate an Indigenous worldview. So that's, so there is a tension in there with kaupapa like this. And we can't separate global from tribal citizenship. We see them as one and the same, as inextricably interwoven together. And with Paola, those connections through the story around, mud man, wood man, corn man, etc., seeing that DNA being interwoven with the natural world as the connective fabric with everyone, through water, through earth. It is that leveler, it doesn't polarize. So those belief systems are collective and connective. So there's something in there that I would encourage people to lean into within wherever you are, within that connection with place first and the people of the place second. The deference and reverence we have for place, we then flow into the people of place.
Now that the ball is naturally on Paola, just building upon what Karl just talked about, in the sense of whatever is considered global citizenship is not new to Indigenous communities. It is already existing. It's only that how it's portrayed mainstream might be different, but not that it's something new there. What is your view on global and tribal citizenship?
How you said, it's not new for us, that kind of concept. So the education civilization is so important for us that we understand that the difference between each other are the best thing for us, because we learn about different things, not only because I have my perspective is the perspective that's still good in the I can learn and change some of my perspective, but at the same time I can take but what I have, what I feel is the best thing for not only for me, for other people, and also for the environment. So I can learn some things that in the future or in the past, for example, as a child, I learned because a bad experience, something like that. But if I had a different opportunity, or if I had the opportunity to change, why not?
Yeah. Thank you, Paola, for that. There's a question from attendee Dawn has shared that she appreciates Karl's comments about the SDGs and is currently in the process of applying for grants to raise the voice of Indigenous youth worldwide regarding climate change. So given kind of the close connection to nature that I think both of you have shared today, could you maybe share a little bit more about the concerns about youth and climate and how this will impact Indigenous cultures and tradition?
Paola, do you want to go first? Yeah, look, I think it's interesting. One, I mean, the climate change thing, I guess, too. I don't know, there's so many communities globally who seem to want to put their head in the sand about it or see it as somebody else's problem or in the New Zealand context, most people, it is high on the agenda, it is front of mind for people, and more so for our youth. But also we have shall I put it, we have an older generation that's a bit more conservative and stoic, that sees it as, actually, the biggest problems are in China and America, and so what we do won't matter. I don't buy that. But what we are doing, particularly my principal tribal entity, Naito, have been very proactive in developing our own climate action plans, and they are community driven, and they are born of place-based contexts again. So if you want to build a deep understanding of what's going on in our natural world, go to the people of place. We would refer to as the ahika, those who keep the home fires burning, the ones who have got intergenerational occupancy of intimacy of connection with, and the transmission of intergenerational knowledge about those ecosystems, because in the kind of framing of the natural world that I shared at a high level, the narratives talk about all of the interdependencies between those domains. Our Māori knowledge system around that is very much ecosystem-based thinking. And so climate change for me is an ecosystem-based challenge, and requiring a kind of an ecosystem-based response. So, and our youth, I mean, I've got 3 children who, one's finishing the last year in school, one's through tertiary education, one's out in the workforce, and they've all been involved in young enterprise as well. And so I see our youth as actually driving a lot of the innovation, because these things are already front of mind for them. So they are already, Paola, you're about half my age, and my kids are younger still. And I acknowledge they're wired a bit differently. The way they are already thinking, what's front of mind, what's present for them is different from us older generations. So I have a lot of faith in opening the space for and supporting our youth to be some of the drivers of solutions, because if we're thinking long-term intergenerational impact, they're the future shapers, not us. So how we liberate space and empower them to lead is something we're working hard on.
Paola, did you want to share anything around that topic of the youth and kind of the climate change and the impact that might be having on your Indigenous community and the traditions and the practices?
Yeah, of course, but maybe if Andres can help me, it would be okay.
Sure, go ahead. Andres, if you want to come back, go for it.
I'm here.
Thank you. Sí, para nosotros también es importante la actividad de los jóvenes, o que los jóvenes estén conscientes del cambio climático. Hoy por hoy se está haciendo una mayor concientización, sin embargo estamos en un proceso también a nivel gubernamental para que esto se lleve a cabo. Nosotros hoy por hoy también tenemos que tener, o nuestro contexto cultural abarca también nuestras condiciones de vida. Esto quiere decir que muchas de las iniciativas que los jóvenes están teniendo son realizadas por grupos pequeños, y que si bien sí están teniendo esta relación para poder ser más conscientes con el medio ambiente, la posibilidad de tener un mayor impacto también se ve incrementada o se ve afectada si los gobiernos, o el gobierno toma cargo y se hace partícipe y toma como uno de las metas o del impacto para poder realizar este cambio consigo, ¿verdad? Entonces, esto es, creo que lo más para nosotros ahora más importante, es porque el concepto ya está, el conocimiento también y las ideas para hacer el cambio también. Sin embargo, estas pueden trascender o tener una mayor factibilidad o un mayor porcentaje de aprovechamiento. Sí, solo sí también tenemos apoyo, en nuestro caso, en Guatemala, gubernamental.
Okay, let's go. But Paola, please let me know if there's something inaccurate. There's an awareness campaign in Guatemala right now, especially for the youth, for the young population, and they have been trying to make this happen and spread the word and make sure that this young people are aware of what is going on. But she admits that they are falling a little bit behind because currently the government is doing some work to try to make this a governmental initiative and not only something that starts with local communities or with the youth. So she's mentioning that there are some small, some minor groups taking the initiative to tackle the climate change in Guatemala. But she also highlights how important it is the government's participation in this and making sure that the initiatives that the government takes in Guatemala include the youth, include the indigenous communities as well. So they are aware that the climate change and the climate crisis affects the traditions and all the cultural aspect and context for the indigenous communities, not only the Mayas, but everywhere. But yes, there has to be this collaborative effort between these groups and the government. All good, Paola?
Sorry, thank you, Paola and Karl. Now that we're in that space of discussing global issues that affect indigenous communities, let's expand our ideas here. How do other global issues, apart from climate change, take place in indigenous communities? And I'm thinking intersectional concerns, like, for example, representation. And how do indigenous communities experience them and tackle them? And maybe to expand the scope even wider, what can the world learn from the Mayan and the Maori with regards to intersectional issues?
Good question. I can see Paola eyes up there thinking, processing the question like myself. But I guess my simplistic answer to that question is that when we kind of have the opportunity to compare and engage with and between differing knowledge systems, we tend to generate new insights. So when we start to talk about some of these pressing issues, my experience to date has been that no single knowledge system often has the answers. And so there is always some new aha moments, some new perspectives, some new thinking and some new solutions start to arise when we have the opportunity to kind of share and pair and I say this in a positive way, interrogate each other's kind of thinking and thoughts and ideas. So, we have a proverbial saying, e hara taka tō he te tō takitahi, engari taki tō he tō takitini, which says, my achievements are not that of one, they are that of many. And so we have a very pluralistic view and very pluralistic ways of thinking about problem solving. And we favor the gathering of collective intuition, collective wisdom over personal knowledge. So we're inherently more collective, collaborative ways of working through and developing solutions to problems.
Thank you, Karl. And I think in our last few minutes, it'd be wonderful to hear from you, Paola, about that perspective. I know you mentioned at the beginning, that you are not only a Mayan, you not only identify as in your Mayan community, but also as a Mayan woman. And, I think it's a little bit about that intersectionality that Makwaneno is speaking to, and just sort of overall how the communities, are supporting that, or just sort of how these intersectional identities play out in your community, if you would be willing to share your, a little bit of your own experience or from your community.
Claro. Creo que es, como mencionabas, es importante tener en cuenta que no es solo ser indígena, sino ser mujer. En este caso, y dado las consecuencias, yo también mencionaba al inicio de la conferencia, pues he tenido experiencias malas, por decirlo de alguna manera, de discriminación. Sin embargo, con el tiempo se han disipado. Estoy muy consciente de que mi entorno es diferente al de muchas otras personas y específicamente mujeres, en donde esta misma situación es aún mayor, pero lamentablemente hoy por hoy, o en lo que a mí me ha tocado experimentar hasta cierto punto, no solo en situaciones académicas, como mencionaba en escuela, por algún comentario, que normalmente son situaciones leves, podemos decirlo así, o alguna mirada como tal. Sin embargo, el trasciende este poderse identificar como mujer indígena, probablemente en un puesto de trabajo, tener una menor capacidad porque se tiene la perspectiva o la concepción errónea de que la persona indígena está puede lograr ciertas actividades, digamos, sin menospreciar las actividades, por ejemplo, agrícolas que hoy por hoy existen dentro del país, por ejemplo, pero como que estar en un contexto o estar fuera de eso, llegando a una empresa, por ejemplo, destaca mucho y eso es hoy por hoy un poco choqueante en el momento porque no debería ser así. Es decir, yo puedo participar en una actividad agrícola si es a mí lo que mayor me parece y en lo cual yo me desempeño de acuerdo, pero también puedo desempeñarme en una actividad académica o empresarial, voy a decir en este momento, sin necesidad de ser prejuzgada por concepciones anteriores que hoy por hoy todavía se siguen manejando o tratando de luchar para poder tener como una estabilidad. Como mujer puedo decir yo que he tenido esta variante, podemos decirlo así, para poder disipar estos comentarios, y es ahí donde, al menos en mi caso, trato de poderlo expresar o tener una mejor conexión, una mejor contactividad con las personas que están a mi alrededor, para que logren entender no solo el papel que es de mujer como tal, sino también la representación indígena y lo cultural que esto conlleva, que no es una limitación, digámoslo así, por una preconcepción que ya se tiene.
So Paola said at the beginning of the presentation that she went through this journey of understanding and perceiving herself not only as an indigenous human, but as an indigenous woman. And she has experienced discrimination in many different levels. And she mentioned a couple of examples at school, for example, or in the professional settings in which people use the stereotypes or judge her not only for being indigenous, but also for being a woman, which makes her situation even harder to find a job, for example. And there is this misconception in many different places that indigenous people are only capable of working in the land, with agriculture, because of their past, of their ancestral past, of course. But they are perfectly capable of being part of many different industries and being capable of working, for example, in business management or any other field. So she has been experienced that people thinking that indigenous can only do one thing. And it has been an ongoing journey and ongoing work, internal and external work for her to communicate that to others and make sure that others understand where she's coming from. And she's aware of the privileges that she had as a woman that had the opportunity to go abroad and understand her identity a little bit better. And she knows that some other indigenous women don't have that opportunity, but she's constantly communicating this to other people and making sure that she breaks down these stereotypes that people have about her and her community.
Thank you, Andres, for interpreting. Thank you, Paola, so much for sharing a bit more about your own personal story. We really do appreciate hearing that. I'm afraid we are at time. I want to give a sincere gratitude, thankfulness for our guest speakers today, Karl, Paola, for sharing your stories, for giving us a little bit more insight, because I know that a lot of what you shared today, I don't think this is, you know, as common knowledge, in these spaces to share this are sometimes hard to come by. So I am just very, very grateful that you accepted the invitation to come share your stories and insights with us here at AFS and with the larger community. And I remember asking Karl if, you know, you had some resources to share, or things for us to read and review. And he said, no, really, it's going to be this space, this conversation. And that is so true, because I think when we listen to each other, we are in relationship with each other. And that is what is so important. And I think we all, I mean, personally speak for myself, feel more in relationship with the two of you today than I did in the past. So I appreciate that. Thank you to all of you who joined us. Thank you for Makoneno for co-hosting, Andres for interpreting, and for AFS for creating the space of us being together. Just briefly, I just have to share quickly that we do have a survey that I would encourage all of you to take a few minutes to share your feedback on this session. If you liked it, what you liked, and what more you would like to hear from us. I know I've gotten a few requests for additional conversations with other perspectives. So I'm really hopeful that we can continue these conversations into 2023 and have more Indigenous and marginalized perspectives shared with us. I also wanted to invite you to AFS's Youth Assembly, which will take place in New York next August. This is an event that hails from delegates all over the world and is inviting individuals between 18 and 32 years old. There is actually a Global Citizenship Award, which we did not have a chance to unpack in today's conversation, and maybe we can leave that for a future conversation about what does it mean when we recognize one person as a global citizen. But I'd like to think that all of us who have joined today are on our own global citizen journeys. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.